If I'm not mistaken, ASUS first introduced the ScreenPad feature on the Zenbook Pro back in Computex 2018. It was an interesting take on the Apple Touch Bar feature while giving it more screen real estate, instead of just a long strip of display that is good for video timeline or emoji scrolling. The following year, ASUS also upgraded the Zenbook and VivoBook S lineup with the ScreenPad feature. Then afterwards, it went quiet. I don't really see anyone using the ScreenPad in the public. Apparently, it is not a compulsory upgrade since each individual country's ASUS product manager can still decide whether to bring in the standard touchpad or ScreenPad version of the laptops. They only brought in the selected SKUs with the ScreenPad. It is highly likely that they have chosen the standard touchpad version to keep the laptop pricing competitive, which indirectly affects the availability of this feature for the customers. At the same time, people were hating on Apple's Touch Bar, which makes it difficult to recommend any features that are similar to that. The ScreenPad Plus is an entirely different story because it is literally half of the screen mounted above your keyboard instead of on your wrist rest area. I thought ASUS has decided to move on to the ScreenPad Plus, but to my surprise, the ScreenPad is back. This is the ASUS Zenbook 14X OLED UX5400E. The Zenbook is the ASUS premium thin and light laptop series. The aluminium chassis has a high quality finish that covers from the lid, keyboard panel to the bottom of the chassis. The corners are rounded while the edges are chamfered. In other words, it looks good and feels good to hold in the hands. Open up the lid, you will be greeted with this beautiful 14-inch 16x10 2880 by 1800 pixel resolution OLED display. It is also a touch-capable display, so you can either use the cursor or your fingers for navigation. The cherry on the cake is no other than the 90Hz refresh rate. Even though it is slower than 120Hz on paper, but for everyday computing, it is more than enough, and you will definitely appreciate the added fluidity and smooth animation. The keyboard has an integrated fingerprint scanner for the power button at the top right corner. The button has a slightly different switch and feels literally different from your other keycaps, so you won't mistake it for the delete key right beside it. At first, I really don't like how this keyboard feels like, but after a few days of usage, I think it is getting a lot better. I think that is just because out of the factory, the keycap surface feels somewhat rough and sandy, so your mileage may differ. The ScreenPad, I have mixed feelings about it. It has a 5.65-inch 2160 by 1080p pixel resolution IPS panel. That is pretty much the same as many phones from yesteryear with that 2:1 aspect ratio. The matte glass surface feels exactly like other high-end trackpads in the market, just that now you got a touchscreen underneath it. That goes without saying, the matte screen definitely will degrade the sharpness of the display. Windows is basically treating the ScreenPad as a secondary display, as you can see from the display settings page. You can drag and drop windows to it, but keep in mind that the UI element is almost impossible to interact with your finger. It is best to use a touch-based application on the ScreenPad or use a mouse. For example, you may use a calculator. Actually, this is the original idea, yes, which they cut down the cost for the number pad.
We'll leave that for the second video.
Yeah. Also, not to mention that when you want to use the ScreenPad as a touchpad, it will have this overlay on top of it, making it impossible for you to see what is going on underneath it. In other words, it is best to use the ScreenPad with an external mouse so that you can still use this screen as your secondary display. If you are not planning to use the ScreenPad, it can also be turned off through the keyboard shortcut. And there you have it. The screen will flicker around because the display is turned off and the windows will have to like switch it back to the main display. And now you can use the touchpad as normally you would use it too. And it will save you battery life as well. We'll talk more about the battery life later on. In terms of performance, the Intel Core i7-1165G7 is no stranger to us. We have tested a lot of laptops with this CPU and it is one of the best options for thin and light laptops. This laptop also comes with a dedicated GPU, NVIDIA GeForce MX 450. Even though it is not significantly better than the Iris Xe graphics, but the 2GB of dedicated VRAM will improve your experience when using creative software such as Premiere Pro or Lightroom. The use of a dedicated GPU also means it will generate extra heat when you push it. That explains why the exhaust vent is larger than usual. This exhaust vent placement also affects the port placement. On the left side, basically you only get a single USB Type-A port, whereas the rest of all the ports are located on the right side. Micro SD card slot, 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports, 3.5mm combo audio jack, and a full-size HDMI port. Now, the battery life. If you turn off the ScreenPad, a single full charge of the 63Wh battery will last you for about 9 hours. Otherwise, if you turn on the ScreenPad, the same full charge will only last for about 6 hours. That's about 50% battery loss just for the display. And it is just how it is. Screen will drain your battery. Not to mention that the Zenbook also has limited upgradability. Opening up the bottom chassis, which is secured by T6 Torx screw, you will only be able to upgrade the M.2 SSD. And you don't have any option to upgrade the RAM because all of them are soldered to the motherboard. Kind of disappointing, but it is what it is. And now it comes to the price of the Zenbook 14X OLED, the UX5400E. The one we have here is the highest end model, the one with Intel Core i7-1165G7, 16 gigs of RAM, 512 gigs of storage, and you're going to pay 5,999 ringgit for this option. And if you don't want, they have a lower variant which comes with the Core i5 that starts from 4,999 ringgit Malaysia. That's basically 1,000 ringgit difference from there. Frankly speaking, I would say the ScreenPad probably adds quite a bit of the costing to this laptop because there is another variant of the laptop which is the VivoBook Pro. That laptop has almost similar specs with this one. That brings us back to the original intent and the stuff I want to talk about in this video, which is the ScreenPad. Again, we're back to the ScreenPad. The ScreenPad has somehow limited functionality from what it can offer. Sure, it is a secondary display. Sure, you can play back YouTube video and do other stuff on this secondary display, given that if you use an external mouse. I can't imagine if ASUS decided to drop the ScreenPad option and went with the standard touchpad, what kind of price they can offer. At the end, it still depends on your personal preference, whether if you need a touch-capable main display and a secondary display for you to, I don't know, play back YouTube content and stuff like that for reference, maybe. So yeah, otherwise, this Zenbook 14X OLED is a very good laptop as a package. However, there's a few things that making it difficult to recommend. Price, ScreenPad, battery life. Oh, and lastly, the upgradability, which is rather disappointing. Otherwise, I really love the main display. This OLED screen is beautiful, high resolution, sharp. 16:10 is just amazing for productivity. I don't care about how other people are talking about 16:9 is the best for media consumption. Nah, OLED, black bar is not a problem. So that's all. If you have any question, leave it down in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.